Every serious scientific institution receives a specific kind of mail. Physics departments have entire shelves for these elaborate, unsolicited manuscripts, written by outsiders claiming to have reinvented the laws of nature. These documents rarely target the margins of a field. They aim straight for the most famous results in physics, determined to show that Einstein was mistaken. Philosopher Boris Kriger points out that the author of that manuscript occupies the same position as a child in the backseat of a car, asking why the moon follows them wherever they drive. Both have an observation that fails to fit the accepted picture of the world, and neither has a way to tell whether the picture is wrong or they are. At the moment when nothing is yet settled, the person with the notebook and the person with the breakthrough are standing in the same place. From the outside, their situation is indistinguishable. We usually rely on a mental checklist to tell them apart. We assume the true pioneer is the one who faces persecution, whose model is elegantly simple, whose predictions are more accurate, and whose ideas are entirely original. We trust these markers to help us identify a discovery before the rest of the world catches up. But consider Nicolaus Copernicus, the man who started the most famous revolution in the history of science. In his book, Rivalry with Copernicus, Kriger audits what actually happened when the Earth was set in motion. If you have used our modern instincts to judge Copernicus in 1543, you would have looked at the founder of modern astronomy and seen only a crank. He was not persecuted. He was a respected church administrator, whose bishops and cardinals pestered and encouraged him to publish for years. His system was not simpler than the one it replaced. To keep the planets moving in perfect circles, he kept the ancient machinery of wheels within wheels in generous quantity. The math wasn't even his. The devices he used to make the circles behave had been worked out centuries earlier by astronomers in Persia and a mosque timekeeper in Damascus. His tables did not make better predictions. On a given Tuesday, the old Earth-centered models were just as likely to get the position of Mars right as his new one. And 60 years after he published, you could count the number of astronomers in all of Europe who believed him on two hands. Copernicus lacked every trait we associate with a scientific hero. To understand why he matters, we have to look somewhere else. We have to ask what separated his work from the many confident men of his century who were simply wrong. His working life was spent as a bureaucrat in a border province. He managed estates, defended a castle during a war, and spent 40 years performing calculations in his spare time. Kriger notes that when a theory fails to match the data, the easy response is to add a device, a new variable, or a small fix that forces the math to work after the fact. Copernicus did the opposite. He removed an assumption, the stationary Earth. Taking that assumption away immediately broke the existing physics of the time and made his predictions look worse. Adding devices gives a theory the freedom to fit any data you want. Removing an assumption strips that freedom away. This reveals a distinction that sounds like bookkeeping, but turns out to be the whole of the matter. In an Earth-centered model, you have to declare the distances of the planets. You can move the orbit of Mars in or out, and the math on the sky doesn't change. But put the sun in the middle, and those distances are derived from the geometry. They come out in a fixed order that the author is not free to adjust. Copernicus could not change those numbers even if he wanted to. His arrangement was bound by its own logic. A theory that gives the author less room to maneuver is a theory that is easier to break. Every fixed quantity is a place where reality is allowed to contradict the math. This brings us back to the person arriving at the physics department with a notebook. Instead of checking their credentials, we can check their bookkeeping. We can count the quantities the theory calculates versus the quantities the author simply wrote in by hand to make it work. The outsider's work often consists entirely of declared quantities, invisible forces and new rules that absorb any discrepancy without taking a structural risk. Modern cosmology faces a similar tension. When we add invisible dark matter and dark energy to balance the universe's budget, we are using the same mechanism. Whether you are a canon in Poland or a researcher today, if your theory relies on declaring unseen entities to make the math work, you are just balancing a ledger. Copernicus died with no proof he was right. The physical evidence didn't begin to arrive until telescopes improved decades later. His contribution was not immediate accuracy. It was laying out exactly what would have to be true if he were right. He accepted the implications of his geometry, even though it required the universe to be empty on a scale nobody wanted. To his contemporaries, that looked like an unimaginable waste of space. Contrast this with a theory that can never be proven wrong because it forbids nothing and predicts everything. The difference is found in the debt. Copernicus built an account with so little freedom that he gave the world a way to prove him wrong. That is the position. Anyone who wants it should understand what it consists of.